Fix this, and I'll give you $100 million. Jonathan Hale sneered, his voice thick with disdain as he pointed at the machine on the table. The room fell silent. His engineers stood by, their faces weary and defeated. No one had been able to fix the engine, a marvel of technology that had stopped working after just 90 seconds. Jonathan had thrown millions into the project, and the whole room was on edge, waiting for someone to solve the problem. But instead of looking for answers, Jonathan's eyes landed on the only person in the room who didn't belong there. Sophie Adams, the maid's daughter, standing quietly at the edge of the lab. Sophie was only 16, dressed in her school uniform, her blonde hair tied neatly back. She had been told to stay out of the way, to remain invisible, like she always did. But now, Jonathan's mocking words cut through the silence, drawing all attention to her. Maybe the maid's kid has the solution. Go ahead, fix it, he said with a smirk, his words dripping with sarcasm. Sophie's hands trembled, but she refused to back down. She had seen how this machine worked. She had watched her mother clean the halls of this very lab for years, and over time, she had picked up a thing or two about technology. She had always been curious, always wanting to learn. The words of her late father echoed in her mind. Asterisk, never let anyone tell you that you can't. Asterisk. Sophie took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was filled with doubt, but in that moment, she had only one thing on her mind, proving them all wrong. She walked slowly to the table, the eyes of everyone in the room following her every move. She reached out and began to inspect the engine, her fingers tracing over the wires and components. The engineers whispered among themselves, clearly skeptical, but Sophie didn't let their doubt shake her. She closed her eyes for a moment, focusing. There was a hum in the air, a rhythm to the engine's failure that only she seemed to hear. She reached for a wire, adjusted it, then carefully turned the power back on. The machine roared to life, the once silent engine now humming smoothly as if nothing had ever been wrong. The room erupted in stunned silence. Jonathan stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, disbelief written all over his face. The engineers exchanged glances, their skepticism evaporating. Sophie, the maid's daughter, had done what no one else could. She had fixed the impossible. Jonathan was speechless. For the first time in his life, he was the one who had been proven wrong. The room was still, but Sophie didn't need applause. She didn't need recognition. She knew her worth, and she had just shown everyone else her hidden brilliance. Jonathan finally snapped out of his stupor, his voice low and filled with astonishment. How did you? He started, but the words caught in his throat. Sophie didn't respond. She simply turned and walked out of the room, her head held high. She had done what no one thought she could. And as she left, the engineers watched her go, no longer questioning her place in the world. Jonathan Hale stood still, his heart pounding in his chest as he watched Sophie Adams walk out of the room. The engineers were still in shock, exchanging bewildered glances, but none of them spoke. The machine, once a symbol of failure, now hummed quietly, working perfectly, something no one, including the world's top engineers, had been able to achieve. Sophie's hands were steady as she walked past them, her back straight, her head held high. No one dared to stop her. She had done what they all thought was impossible. She had fixed the engine. And now, the power had shifted. Jonathan was no longer the man with all the answers. Sophie was. Sophie's mother, Abigail, had always warned her not to expect much from the world. People will never see your worth, Sophie, she would say. But that doesn't mean you don't have it. Sophie had learned to accept her place, the quiet, invisible corner where she'd grown up. But today was different. Today, Sophie had shown them all that she was more than just the maid's daughter. She was capable. She was brilliant. Jonathan Hale stood in silence, the weight of the moment settling in. The entire room was still, the air thick with the realization that they had underestimated someone they thought was beneath them. But Sophie didn't let that moment last long. She knew her worth, and she wasn't going to stand around and wait for their applause. She walked out of the room, her footsteps echoing down the hall. She had already proven everything she needed to. As she left the lab, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. It was a strange feeling, not one she had expected after such a tense moment. But there was no joy in her heart, no gloating. She had simply done what she had to do. She had done what no one else could. And that was enough. Sophie's mother, Abigail, was sitting in the break room when Sophie came to find her. The older woman looked up in surprise, her tired eyes lighting up when she saw her daughter. "Sophie, what are you doing here? You should be at school," she said, her voice soft but worried. Sophie smiled and shook her head. "I had to leave early, Mom. I did something today." Abigail raised an eyebrow, concern flickering in her expression. "What do you mean?" Sophie paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts. She didn't need to explain the whole story. The only thing that mattered was that she had finally proven herself. "I fixed the engine," she said simply. Abigail blinked, processing the words, her face softening with pride. "You what?" "I fixed the engine, Mom," Sophie repeated, her voice calm but filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. "Jonathan Hale gave me a challenge, and I solved it." Just like that. Abigail's jaw dropped, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. She had always known Sophie was special, but this was something beyond what she had ever imagined. Jonathan Hale, the billionaire CEO, had given her daughter a challenge, and Sophie had met it head-on, just like a professional. Abigail reached for her daughter's hand, holding it tightly. "I knew you could do it, Sophie. I've always known." Sophie smiled softly. "I'm not just the maid's daughter, Mom. I'm more than that." For the first time in a long time, Abigail felt a deep sense of hope. Maybe things could change. Maybe this was just the beginning for Sophie. But as Sophie looked into her mother's eyes, she knew there was still a long road ahead. A road that would require more than just proving her worth. It would take courage. It would take perseverance. But Sophie was ready. She had already taken the first step, and nothing was going to stop her now. I went back to the lab the next day, and the atmosphere was completely different. No one was mocking me. No one was laughing. The engineers, once too proud to acknowledge me, now looked at me with a mixture of respect and awe. Jonathan Hale had kept his word. He hadn't expected me to fix the engine, but I did. And now, something had shifted. The room was no longer filled with arrogant skepticism, but instead, a quiet acknowledgement that I had proven myself. As I walked in, I could feel the eyes on me, but this time, they weren't filled with judgment. They were curious. I walked past the rows of high-tech machines, my mind still replaying the events from yesterday. The way the engine had hummed to life under my fingers, the shock in Jonathan's eyes, the stunned silence that had filled the room after I fixed what everyone else thought was impossible. It had all felt surreal, like a dream, but it was real, and it had changed everything. When I reached my workstation, I found a small note on my desk. It was from Jonathan. "Meet me in my office in an hour," it said. My heart skipped a beat. Why did he want to see me? Was it just to thank me? Or was he going to offer me something more? I tried to keep my cool, but I couldn't help the nervous excitement bubbling up inside me. I had never been called to a CEO's office before. I had never even imagined it. I had always stayed in the background, just the maid's daughter. But now, something was different. I had done the impossible. I had earned their respect. As I walked into Jonathan's office an hour later, I was greeted with a stern but thoughtful expression. He was standing by the window, looking out over the city. "Sophie," he said without turning around, "I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't think you could do it. I didn't think anyone could." I swallowed, trying to stay calm. "But you did," he continued, turning to face me. "You fixed it. And now, we need you. I need you." My mind raced. What was he saying? Was he offering me a job? "You're not just some girl off the street," Jonathan said, his voice more serious than ever. "You have talent. You've shown me that. And I need someone like you on my team." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean?" I asked, unsure if I had heard him correctly. He walked over to his desk and picked up a folder. He handed it to me. "This is a project I've been working on for a while. It's high stakes, and I need someone with your skills to make it work." I looked down at the folder, my hands trembling slightly as I opened it. Inside were blueprints, calculations, and notes about a new tech venture, something big. "I want you to help me lead this project," Jonathan said, his eyes locked on mine. "We're going to change the world, Sophie, and I want you to be a part of it." My mind was spinning. This was it. This was the opportunity one had always dreamed of, but never thought would come. "You're offering me a chance?" I asked, still in shock. Jonathan nodded. "I am. You've proven yourself. And I believe in you." In that moment, I realized that everything had changed. I wasn't just the maid's daughter anymore. I wasn't invisible. I was a part of something bigger. I was part of the team. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged. I arrived at the office the next morning, feeling a sense of anticipation that I had never experienced before. The hallway seemed different somehow, the walls not as tall, the floor not as cold. It was as if the world around me had changed overnight, and in a way, it had. I had proven myself. I had earned my place in this high-tech world, and now, I was a part of it. As I entered Jonathan Hale's office, I was met with a quiet, determined look in his eyes. He didn't smile, but there was a spark of respect there that hadn't been there before. "Sophie," he said as I entered, his tone firm yet welcoming. "We're starting the project today. I want you to be at the helm." I nodded, trying to suppress the excitement rising within me. "What exactly do you need me to do?" I asked, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside. Jonathan handed me a stack of papers, and I looked down at them. They were technical specifications for the new venture, plans for an innovation that could revolutionize the industry. This wasn't just some side project. This was huge. "I've seen the way you think, Sophie. You've got a sharp mind. I need someone who can think outside the box, someone who isn't afraid to challenge the status quo," Jonathan said, his eyes never leaving mine. I felt the weight of his words. This wasn't just a job. This was an opportunity to make a real difference, to prove that I belonged here, that I wasn't just the maid's daughter. "I'm ready," I said, taking a deep breath. Jonathan gave a brief nod of approval before motioning to the seat across from his desk. "Then let's get to work. We've got a lot to do." For the next few hours, Jonathan and I discussed the project in detail, going over every aspect of it. He didn't treat me like a novice. He didn't treat me like someone who didn't belong. He treated me like a partner. And that was exactly what I needed. As the day went on, I could feel the tension easing out of my shoulders. This was where I was meant to be. This was what I had worked for. By the end of the day, I had a clear vision of what needed to be done, and I felt more confident than I had ever felt in my life. I wasn't just the maid's daughter anymore. I was Sophie Adams, a key player in a groundbreaking project, and I had the chance to prove that I was more than capable. As I left the office that evening, I couldn't help but smile to myself. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be obstacles, there would be challenges, but I was ready for them. I had already overcome the biggest one, proving my worth. And now, there was nothing stopping me. I sat at my desk, the weight of the project pressing down on me. Jonathan had given me the reins, and I knew this was my moment to prove that I wasn't just capable, but that I could be a driving force behind something incredible. The plans were all in front of me, blueprints, calculations, timelines, and it was up to me to make it all come together. I had spent the past few days poring over the documents, going over every detail, making sure that nothing was left to chance. The team was starting to look to me for answers, and that was a responsibility I wasn't going to take lightly. As the days passed, I worked closely with Jonathan and the engineers, guiding them through the process, making decisions that affected the future of the project. I couldn't help but notice the change in how people treated me. The skeptical looks were gone. No longer did they look at me as the maid's daughter. I had earned their respect. I had earned my place in the room. But there was one person who still hadn't spoken much to me. Richard, one of the senior engineers. He had been quiet since the day I had fixed the engine. He didn't openly mock me, but I could feel his disapproval in the way he avoided eye contact. It was a subtle thing, but I noticed. One afternoon, as I was walking through the lab, I spotted Richard standing near one of the workstations, his back to me. I approached him cautiously, unsure of what to expect. "Richard," I said, my voice steady but unsure. He turned, his face unreadable. "I need your input on something," I continued, holding out a set of documents for him to look over. He hesitated for a moment, then took the papers from my hand. As he skimmed through them, I could see the wheels turning in his mind. There was no more doubt in his expression, no more arrogance. There was just focus. "This is good," he said, his tone begrudgingly respectful. "You've got a good grasp of this." I didn't expect that. His words, though simple, meant more to me than I could express. Richard had been one of the first to laugh at me, to dismiss me as nothing more than the maid's daughter. And now, here he was, acknowledging my work. It was a quiet victory, but it was mine. "Thank you, Richard," I said, my voice softer than I intended. He looked up from the papers and nodded. "You've earned it," he said, and for the first time, I saw something resembling respect in his eyes. I walked away from that conversation with a newfound sense of confidence. I wasn't just doing this project to prove myself to Jonathan. I was doing it to prove to everyone who had ever doubted me that I was more than what they thought. I was making a name for myself. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of meetings, long hours, and endless revisions. But with each passing day, I felt more and more at home in this world of technology and innovation. I was no longer just the maid's daughter. I was Sophie Adams, a leader in a groundbreaking project. And as the team made progress, I couldn't help but think back to the day Jonathan had handed me the opportunity. It had started as a challenge, a test, but it had become so much more than that. It had become my chance to prove to myself and to the world that I could do anything I set my mind to. The work wasn't easy, but it was fulfilling in a way I had never imagined. Each challenge was a stepping stone, each success a reminder that I was capable of greatness. And with every passing day, I was one step closer to achieving something that no one had ever thought I could. My journey was just beginning. I had never seen Jonathan this focused before. It had been weeks since I'd first stepped into this world, and now, as I sat across from him in his office, I could feel the shift in both our positions. I wasn't just the girl who had fixed the engine anymore. I was part of the team, and I had earned every ounce of the responsibility that came with it. Sophie, Jonathan said, breaking the silence as he leaned back in his chair. His voice was steady, but there was an edge of seriousness that made me sit up straighter. We're at a crossroads. This project is bigger than we imagined, and the stakes are higher than ever. I need you to take the lead on this. My heart skipped a beat. The words hit me harder than I expected. This wasn't just another task. It was a moment that could define my entire future. Are you sure? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jonathan looked at me, his gaze unwavering. I've never been more certain. You've got the vision, the clarity that this project needs. We need someone who isn't afraid to challenge the impossible. The room felt smaller in that moment, as if the weight of his words filled every corner. I had been waiting for a moment like this, but now that it was here, I realized the true magnitude of what Jonathan was asking. It wasn't just about solving problems anymore. It was about leading a team, making decisions that would affect lives, and taking the project into the next phase. I'm ready, I said, though my voice felt a little shaky. I knew what this meant. It meant I had to push past every doubt I'd ever had, every moment of fear, and every lingering thought that I wasn't good enough. But this was my chance. I couldn't back down. Jonathan nodded, then slid a folder across the table. Here's the plan. It's ambitious, but I think we can do it. With your leadership, we'll change everything. I opened the folder and scanned the contents. The plans were more detailed than I had expected. Blueprints, projections, timelines that seemed impossible. But I wasn't afraid. I had worked my way up from nothing, and now, I had the power to take control. We'll need a team, I said, glancing up from the papers. I can't do this alone. Jonathan smiled, a rare and genuine smile. You're not alone, Sophie. You've already built a team, your ideas, your vision, and your ability to inspire people. That's why I'm trusting you with this. His words settled over me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of belonging. This was where I was meant to be. The team started to take shape, and soon, we were working side by side, each person bringing their expertise to the table. The atmosphere in the office had changed, too. There was a sense of unity, of shared purpose. And with each passing day, I felt myself growing into the role Jonathan had entrusted me with. As we reached new milestones, I realized that this was more than just a job. It was the culmination of everything I had worked for, the chance to prove that I was more than just the maid's daughter. I was someone who could change the world. I walked into the office the next morning, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle over my shoulders. The team was already at work, each of them focused on their tasks, but there was a new energy in the air. It wasn't just the project anymore. It was the future we were building together, and I was at the center of it. Jonathan had placed his trust in me, and I wasn't about to let him down. The last few weeks had been a blur of meetings, planning sessions, and late nights. But every time I looked at the team, I saw something more than just coworkers. I saw a group of people united by a shared vision, and I knew that we could accomplish something incredible. We were working on technology that could change the world, and I was leading the charge. As I sat at my desk, reviewing the progress reports, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. This was what I had always wanted, a chance to lead, a chance to make a real impact. The door to my office opened, and Jonathan stepped in. "How's everything going?" he asked, his voice calm but expectant. I looked up from the papers and smiled. "It's going well. We're on track to meet our deadlines. The team is coming together better than I expected." Jonathan nodded, his eyes focused on me. "Good. But I need you to push harder. This project isn't just about meeting deadlines. It's about creating something that's never been done before. I need your full commitment." His words hit me with a renewed sense of purpose. I had known this wasn't going to be easy, but now I understood just how high the stakes were. This wasn't just another project. This was the one that would define us all. "I understand," I said, my voice steady. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes." Jonathan gave a small nod of approval. "I know you are. That's why I'm counting on you." As he left the room, I sat there for a moment, taking in the weight of his words. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the entire team. It was about the vision we had created and the legacy we were building. The pressure was higher than ever, but I was ready. I had come this far, and I wasn't going to stop now. Over the next few weeks, I worked harder than I ever had before. The team and I faced challenges that tested our abilities and our resolve, but we pushed through each obstacle. There were moments when doubt crept in, when it felt like the project might not succeed. But I reminded myself why I was here. I had proven my worth, not just to Jonathan, but to myself. And that was all that mattered. One afternoon, as we were finalizing a key aspect of the project, Jonathan called me into his office. I walked in, my heart beating a little faster. He was sitting at his desk, a slight smile on his face. "I've been watching your progress," he said, his voice warm. "You've exceeded my expectations, Sophie. This project is in good hands." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but I didn't let myself get too comfortable. There was still more to do. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "But we're not done yet." Jonathan chuckled. "No, we're not. But you're leading us in the right direction. Keep pushing." I left his office feeling a sense of pride I hadn't felt before. I had worked hard to get here, and now I was exactly where I needed to be. The project was on the verge of something big, and I was at the forefront of it. It was no longer about proving myself. It was about achieving something incredible, and I knew that together, we could make it happen. I stood in front of the conference room, my hands trembling slightly as I prepared for the presentation. The team had worked relentlessly for weeks, and now, it was time to show everyone what we had accomplished. Jonathan stood beside me, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a quiet anticipation. This was the moment that would define everything we had worked for. "Remember," Jonathan said, his voice low, "this is more than just a presentation. It's the future. Your future. Just focus on the data, the results. They'll follow." I nodded, taking a deep breath. I had never been in a room like this before, filled with powerful investors, industry leaders, and key players. The stakes were high, and the pressure felt heavier than ever. As I walked into the room, all eyes were on me. I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I had led this project from the beginning, and now, it was time to show them why they had made the right decision by trusting me. The presentation began, and I walked them through the technical details of the project, the challenges we had faced, and the innovative solutions we had implemented. As I spoke, I could see the interest growing in their eyes. The data was undeniable. The results were real. And when I finally reached the conclusion of the presentation, the room was silent. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their gaze. "This is just the beginning," I said, my voice steady but firm. "With your investment and our dedication, we can change the world." The silence in the room was palpable. Then, slowly, one by one, the investors began to clap. It started as a few hesitant claps, but soon, the entire room was applauding. I felt a rush of relief, of pride. This was it. We had done it. Jonathan was standing at the back of the room, a slight smile on his face as he watched the applause. When the room finally quieted down, he approached me. "Well done, Sophie," he said, his voice full of pride. "You've proven everything I knew you could. You've earned your place here." I felt a swell of emotion rise within me. It wasn't just about the success of the project. It was about everything that had led up to this moment. The long hours, the struggles, the doubt, and the relentless drive to prove myself. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without the team." Jonathan nodded, his expression serious. "And that's what makes you different. you understand that it's not just about one person. It's about building something together. The next few days were a blur of meetings and celebrations, but as the dust settled, I found myself reflecting on how far I had come. From the quiet girl in the back of the room to the leader of a groundbreaking project, it had been a journey of growth, determination, and self-discovery. I had proven to myself that I could achieve anything, and now, the world was taking notice. But the road ahead was still long. There would be new challenges, new obstacles, and moments of doubt. But I knew now that I had the strength to face them. I had already proven that I could rise above, and nothing was going to stop me. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen in front of me, the numbers and data points scrolling past like they were in a different language. Despite all the success, there was still something nagging at me. The project had taken off, the team was growing, and the investors were happy. But as the weeks turned into months, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. I had proven myself, yes, but was I truly ready for everything that was coming next? I had led the team through the toughest challenges, but now, with the success of the project in the bag, the questions in my mind had shifted. What was my next step? Where did I go from here? Jonathan's words from the first day echoed in my mind. Asterisk, you have the vision. You can do this. Asterisk, but the weight of leadership was starting to feel heavier than I had expected. I was no longer just Sophie Adams, the girl who fixed the engine. I was the leader of a groundbreaking project, a team, a future that could change everything. The pressure was building, and I knew I had to rise to the occasion. Jonathan must have sensed my uncertainty, because he called me into his office one afternoon. As I walked in, I tried to push the doubts from my mind, but they clung to me like a shadow. He was sitting at his desk, reviewing some papers, but when he saw me, he put them down and gave me his full attention. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, he said, his tone gentle but knowing. You don't have to do this alone, Sophie. I've seen you lead this team through thick and thin, but I also know when it's time to step back and trust others. I nodded, grateful for his understanding, but a part of me still felt reluctant to let go of the reins. I'm not sure I'm ready to delegate, I admitted. I've always been the one to take charge. It's hard to let go. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Leadership doesn't mean doing everything yourself. It's about empowering others to step up and shine. You've already shown you have the ability to lead. Now, it's time to trust your team and let them do what they do best. You can't do it all alone, and that's okay. His words hit me harder than I expected. He was right. I had been holding on so tightly to every detail, every decision, because I didn't want to let anyone down. But leadership wasn't about doing it all. It was about lifting others up and allowing them to shine. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension start to melt away. I understand, I said, my voice steadier now. I'll trust them. It's time to let go. Jonathan smiled, the corner of his mouth lifting. I knew you would. And that's why you're going to continue to do amazing things, Sophie. As I left his office, a sense of relief washed over me. The weight of the world hadn't disappeared, but now, I understood that I didn't have to carry it alone. I had built a team that I could trust, and together, we would keep moving forward. There was still so much to be done, and I was ready to face it head-on. This was just the beginning, and I knew that with my team by my side, we could take on anything that came our way. I walked into the office the next morning, the weight of the last few days settling heavily on my shoulders. There was so much to do, so many moving parts to keep track of. The project was growing faster than I had imagined, and I was no longer just a participant. I was the driving force. My phone buzzed on the desk, and I glanced at it, seeing a message from Jonathan. Meeting in an hour. Prepare the latest numbers. I nodded to myself, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. I was ready, but was I really? Jonathan had entrusted me with so much already, and I couldn't afford to let him down now. I needed to show him that I could handle the pressure, that I could lead with confidence. The team had been working day and night to bring this project to life, and we were on the brink of something big. As I entered the conference room, I found Jonathan already there, sitting at the head of the table, his usual composed demeanor present, but I could see the faint trace of concern in his eyes. Sophie, he greeted me with a nod. How are we looking? I set the papers down in front of him, taking a deep breath before answering. We're on track. The numbers look solid, and we're hitting all of our milestones. The team is pushing forward. We're almost there. Jonathan took the papers, scanning the charts and graphs quickly, nodding as he absorbed the information. Good, he said, then paused. But I need you to dig deeper. There's more to this. We can't afford to leave anything to chance now. We're not just launching a product, Sophie. We're starting a revolution. His words made my pulse quicken. Revolution. That was exactly what we were doing. We were creating something that could change everything. I had known this all along, but hearing it from Jonathan, with the weight of his experience behind it, made it feel real. The pressure was immense. But it wasn't just the success of the project that weighed on me. It was the team, the people who were counting on me to lead them through to the end. I understand, I said, my voice steady despite the intensity of the moment. We won't let anything slip through the cracks. Jonathan gave me a sharp look, a challenge in his eyes. I know you won't. This is your moment, Sophie. Don't let doubt hold you back. His words were a reminder of the responsibility I had taken on. I wasn't just here to complete a task. I was here to lead, to make decisions that would shape the future. And I wasn't going to waste this opportunity. As the meeting wrapped up, I left the conference room with a new sense of determination. I couldn't let fear take over. I had come this far, and there was no turning back. It was time to finish what we started. Over the next few weeks, I found myself stepping into the role I had been avoiding. The decisions grew harder, the stakes higher, but I wasn't afraid anymore. Every time I felt the weight of responsibility bearing down on me, I remembered what Jonathan had said. This was my moment. The team was looking to me, and I couldn't let them down. We pushed forward, making adjustments, refining the product, and preparing for launch. And as the days went by, I realized that I had grown into the leader I had always hoped to become. This project was no longer just about proving my worth. It was about something bigger. It was about creating something that would leave a lasting impact. And with each step we took, I knew we were getting closer to something that would change the world. I walked into the office, the hum of activity around me serving as a reminder that we were closing in on the final stages of the project. The last few months had flown by, a blur of hard work, sleepless nights, and countless meetings. But now, the finish line was in sight. The product was ready, the team was prepared, and the moment we had all been waiting for was just around the corner. As I sat at my desk, reviewing the final numbers, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we had come. From the first day Jonathan had trusted me with this responsibility, to the countless hours spent strategizing, refining, and perfecting every detail. It felt like a dream. But the pressure was still there. The stakes had never been higher. This was no longer just about proving myself or meeting expectations. This was about leaving a legacy, about changing the way people thought about innovation. As I looked over the final presentation for the investors, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. I was ready. The team was ready. We had put everything into this, and now, it was time to let the work speak for itself. The room was buzzing when I walked into the conference, the investors taking their seats, whispering to each other as they waited for the presentation to begin. Jonathan stood at the front, a quiet confidence in his posture, his eyes scanning the room. I took my place at the table, and as the meeting began, I could feel the weight of the moment. This was the culmination of everything we had worked for. I began the presentation, speaking with clarity and confidence, walking through every detail of the project. The numbers, the projections, the innovations we had introduced, they were all there, undeniable proof of what we had achieved. As I spoke, I could see the investors' expressions change. They were listening, really listening. And for the first time, I felt a deep sense of pride. This was my moment. This was the moment I had been preparing for. By the time I finished, the room was silent. I glanced at Jonathan, and for the first time, I saw him nod in approval. It was subtle, but it was enough. Then, slowly, the investors began to applaud. It wasn't loud, but it was sincere. I felt a rush of relief and pride. We had done it. The project was a success. As the meeting wrapped up, Jonathan came over to me. A slight smile on his face. "You did it, Sophie," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You led us through every challenge, and you made it happen." I smiled, my heart swelling with gratitude. "We did it," I said, looking around at the team. "This was a team effort." Jonathan nodded. "But you were the one who led them. You were the one who brought this all together." As the investors began to file out of the room, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. But it wasn't just the exhaustion of a long day. It was the exhaustion of knowing that I had done something incredible. The road ahead was still long, but for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. I had led the team to success, and now, the world was taking notice. This was just the beginning. I stood at the front of the room, looking out at the faces of the investors and team members who had gathered to hear the final presentation. It was a pivotal moment, a culmination of all the hard work, challenges, and sacrifices that had led us to this point. The last few months had been nothing short of a whirlwind, late nights, endless meetings, and moments of doubt. But today, everything was about to pay off. Jonathan was seated beside me, his calm presence a steady reminder that this was our time. I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar rush of anticipation. The screen behind me flickered to life, displaying the final results, projections, and the incredible breakthroughs we had achieved. As I spoke, I felt the weight of the room's attention on me. I went over every detail, every accomplishment, and every challenge we had faced. But it wasn't just the numbers that mattered now. It was the story we had created together. The story of a team that refused to back down. A story of innovation, perseverance, and belief in something bigger than ourselves. The investors listened closely, their eyes following the data, but I could see something more in their expressions: interest, curiosity, and for the first time, a sense of excitement. I wrapped up the presentation with the closing words I had rehearsed so many times in my mind. This is just the beginning. We are on the brink of something that will change everything. The room was silent for a moment, and then, to my surprise, a round of applause broke out. It wasn't thunderous, but it was sincere, and it felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. The investors were on board. The project was a success. Jonathan stood, his expression approving as he turned to me. "Well done, Sophie. You've not only met expectations, you've exceeded them." I felt a wave of pride wash over me, but I knew that none of this would have been possible without the incredible team that had supported me every step of the way. As the applause continued, I looked around at the faces of my colleagues. These were the people who had believed in me, even when I hadn't fully believed in myself. The success of this project wasn't just about the technology or the numbers. It was about the relationships, the trust, and the shared vision that had brought us together. After the meeting, the investors made their commitments, and the project was officially set to launch. Jonathan called me into his office later that afternoon, and as I walked in, he looked up from his desk with a proud smile. "You've done it, Sophie," he said. "You've shown everyone that you're not just a leader, you're a visionary. And this is just the start of what's to come." His words felt like a validation of everything I had worked for. I had doubted myself so many times along the way, but now, standing here with Jonathan's approval and the support of my team, I knew that I had found my place in this world. It was no longer about proving anything to anyone. It was about continuing to push forward, to keep innovating, and to lead with the same determination that had brought us here. As I walked out of his office, a sense of calm settled over me. The road ahead was still long, and the challenges would keep coming, but I was ready. I had earned my place here, and I was determined to make the most of it. This was just the beginning. I stood at the edge of the balcony, looking out over the city, the skyline stretching out before me as the sun began to set. The past few months had been a whirlwind, and now, as I looked back on everything, I could hardly believe how far I had come. From the moment Jonathan had trusted me with the project to the overwhelming support of the team, I had proved to myself and to others that I was capable of leading something extraordinary. The challenges had been tough, and there had been moments when I doubted myself. But now, looking at the success of the project, all of that seemed worth it. It wasn't just the technical accomplishments that mattered. It was the way we had all come together to make something real, something that would change the industry. I had learned more than I ever thought I would, not just about technology, but about leadership, perseverance, and trust. The team had become like a second family to me, and I knew that no matter what came next, we would be ready for it. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but it was one I was now confident enough to walk down. Jonathan's faith in me had been a constant source of encouragement, and now, as we approached the launch, I felt a deep sense of pride in what we had accomplished. I was no longer just the maid's daughter. Today, I was a leader in my own right. The sound of the door opening behind me brought me back to reality. I turned to see Jonathan standing there, a look of quiet pride on his face. "You've done it, Sophie," he said. We've done it. I replied, my voice steady. This was a team effort. I couldn't have done it without them. He nodded, stepping forward to stand beside me. You've earned your place here, Sophie. I knew you could do it from the start. And now, everyone else knows it too. I smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment that I had never known before. This wasn't just the end of a project. It was the beginning of something bigger. The future was wide open, and I knew that whatever came next, I was ready for it. As we stood there together, watching the city come to life below us, I couldn't help but feel grateful for everything that had brought me to this point. I had learned that it was okay to rely on others, to trust the people around me. Leadership wasn't about doing it all alone. It was about inspiring others to rise to the occasion, to work together towards a common goal. And that was exactly what we had done. The launch was just the first step in what would undoubtedly be a long journey. But I knew now that I had the strength, the team, and the vision to see it through. With everything we had accomplished, there was no doubt in my mind that the best was yet to come.